Now, moving on, and the government is being accused of potentially putting women at risk after proposing a U-turn on protests outside anti-abortion clinics. Ministers are currently consulting on whether to scrap the 150-metre safe zones, which would then allow campaigners to approach women using the service, a decision that abortion charities have described as dangerous. The Home Office said that all responses will be considered ahead of publishing the final version of the guidance.
It comes as a Christian preacher has appeared in court after holding a pro-life sign outside a clinic in West London. 72-year-old Stephen Green is accused of protesting against abortion within a protected zone.
Well, joining us now to discuss all of this is the director of Affinity Gospel Church, Graham Nichols, and broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. This is an extremely sensitive topic. It's a topic that divides people in many respects. But I'm going to start with you, Graham. Look, I'm a Christian, right? And I think if people want to pray and have a belief that abortion is wrong and that the little lives that have been essentially killed need to be blessed and go to heaven, then you can do that, but you don't need to go and stand outside the abortion clinic, do you?
I'm not particularly in favour of that practice, so it's not something that I personally do. But as a general principle, I think we protest in all kinds of contexts. I'm not supporting any idea of kind of breaking into surgeries and protesting, but in public places, we're allowed to protest, generally speaking. And people like myself feel very strongly about the sanctity of the life of the unborn child. And I think it's reasonable to be able to express that to people who may not have heard it. Now, whether the particular practices of this or that protest is good, I don't know. But in terms of the principle, I don't think we really as a nation want to stop people having the right to protest and to express themselves. And I do think we're forgetting the rights of the unborn child in this, and we're just focusing on the potential harms to the mother, which I think are possibly there from the sort of trauma of the protest, but they're also there from the trauma of abortion, and they're there for very much so for the baby that's unborn. So I think we need to focus on the child as well as the mother.
I don't agree with you, but I believe you have the right to protest. That's a freedom of speech issue, which I think is sacred to this country. But I'm not sure about the practice of showing, traumatised young women going to the clinic and showing them graphic pictures, surgical pictures of abortions. Would you agree with me that that's not on?
I'm not sure I agree that that's not on, in the sense people have got to protest in the way that they think is best by providing information. And abortion is truly brutal, however you want to describe it, whether you have pictures or not. It is truly brutal, and particularly if the pregnancy is fairly well advanced. You know, in terms of the crushing and the mashing and the vacuuming out of a baby from inside a mother's womb. So I think there is a brutality to it that sometimes needs to be exposed. And,
Lucy,
health risks.
I'm going to come to you now because, well, I mean, Graham, they're saying it's truly brutal. I would argue, frankly, in most cases it's not. It's become very easy and very accessible. And if we were going to discuss abortion at all, perhaps we should be looking at instead putting into practice something like a cooling off period and counselling for women who are in the process of making that decision.
But that happens already. I think the idea that abortion is taken lightly by any woman at all is just a fallacy. This is an incredibly important moment in a woman's life, deciding what to do with her body because of a situation that she finds herself in, sometimes not of her choosing, and it can be as a result of rape, it can be as a result of domestic abuse, or it could be part of a loving, consensual relationship. But whatever the circumstances, there is this idea that a woman has the right to decide what happens to her body. And psychologically, the idea of the protest, and in a country like this, protest is a very sacred tradition. That's very important, but intimidation is not a sacred tradition. And the idea that these buffer zones, which have been enforced before, but are now perhaps being watered down or weakened, is a really retrograde step, because we're actually going back to a time where women were shamed or ridiculed or abused for making these choices. And I thought we'd moved on from that. And it's very possible that we haven't. And I think that's a very sad day for women's rights and for the mental health rights of all sorts of other groups.
Let's go back to Graham. We haven't got much time left, Graham, but why don't you believe that a woman has the right to make a decision about her own body?
I think she absolutely does have the right to make a decision about her own body. I don't think she has the decision to terminate the life of another body, and that is the child that's within her. If it was just a matter of some biological material we just need to get rid of, if it was a medical procedure, the removal of an organ that was damaged, absolutely, no one should be protesting. But this is about the life of an unborn child, a human being, a person, made in the image of God, who I think has the right to life.
One last point, Graham, though. The mother is a human being and a person as well. When they're going to the abortion clinic, they're often in a very emotional state. And I would reiterate what I'd said to you before. I just don't think it's fair to show these emotionally fragile women pictures of surgical procedures as they go through this procedure. Would you must agree with that that's not fair to those women.
Yeah. I'm really not highly, as you guessed from my sort of hesitation, I'm not highly in favour of that particular practice, but I think some people want to do that, and I would stand up for their right to do that. I would rather want to reason with people, and I don't think it's true that everyone enters into this in a really well-informed state. I've experienced that, with many people being a Christian pastor.
Lucy, finally, it seems to me that the debate around abortion, which I kind of felt was sort of settled, has really kicked off social media, Roe versus Wade in America, and all of a sudden is being spoken about again here. Is this a debate we need to open back up again, or should we just slam the lid shut and say, do you know what, the country seems to be getting on fairly peaceably with the situation we had come to, and do we really need to reignite this public debate?
It's very concerning, and I think the retrograde step around Roe versus Wade in America last year was really worrying for a lot of people of all political persuasions. We saw prior to that the way in which Ireland had actually had a vote in which they felt they had really entered, if you like, the 21st century to be able to give women the right to choose. And I think the key thing, if we're going to have a debate about it at all, it has to be around this idea of the difference between protest and intimidation, that actually the group and the herd instinct that can really be brought to bear on women at an extremely vulnerable time in their lives is simply not acceptable. And the more we can talk about that and change that and make sure that these rules, these buffer zones are not watered down, that would be the best thing.
Lucy Beresford and Graham Nichols, thank you so much. Good to talk to you.